Hey guys, it's Holly. Welcome back. So today I'm doing a fairly short video on my experience with DoorDash and being a DoorDash driver. So I thought I would take a minute to kind of just talk a little bit about it and share my experience with you. So ultimately, I have been DoorDashing for very, very part-time, mind you. So I've been doing this for probably a good 7 to 8 months, I would say. And so at first I was doing just very, very little, maybe 1 or 2 in a week. Like that was it. And then I guess after a few months I started doing quite a bit more. And so at this point it's definitely a side source of income for me. I do as much as I can, as many deliveries as I can. However, that can be kind of hard to do because I am a single parent and I just don't always have a lot of time that I can be out working, period, let alone doing extra deliveries. But whenever I don't have my kids, or whenever I just have my older one who's 7, we will go out and DoorDash because you can take your children with you, which is really cool. So long story short, I want to talk a little bit about what I don't like about it and what I do like about it. So what I don't like about DoorDash, the number one thing I don't like about it is that they don't require people to tip, and a lot of people do not tip. Now, this is going to depend on the area that you're in. So I know, like for me, generally what I will experience is in more rural areas or of course upscale areas, tips tend to be larger. However, in a more rural area, sometimes you will be driving further but getting paid better, if that makes sense. So I did also try Ubereats 3 or 4 years ago, and I was not a big fan of driving for Ubereats. I felt like I'm sure it's changed by now, but I'm not sure how much it's changed. But I really, oh my gosh, it was just not worth my time at all. Like, it was such a minuscule, tiny amount of money at the time. Like, I would never get more than $2 to $3 for an order, which was ridiculous. Of course, like I say, that was 3 to 4 years ago. But, so long story short, so that's certainly what I don't like about DoorDash is a lot of people don't tip. I would say out of every 10 deliveries, there's probably 2 to 3 people that don't tip at all. Sometimes it can even be more than that. And it depends, like I said, depends on where you're at. So I highly recommend, if at all possible, if you're doing DoorDash, and the same goes for, Grubhub, Ubereats, any of these other apps, I highly recommend trying to stick to a more upscale area, or at least maybe not super inner city. I have noticed in the inner city is where I usually will experience the no tipping issue and just orders that pay less in general. So that's definitely something to take in consideration. And I am in Texas. I'm in the Dallas, Texas area, which is very broad, very vast. And so we have all kinds of different cities and all kinds of different types of societies here in the DFW area. So again, I highly recommend just looking at the areas that you're in. Now, sometimes it's not always possible to go out of your way to go into a better area. I know for me, a lot of times, more often than not, I just have to dash along the way and to wherever I'm going. And honestly, I feel like that's worth it because I don't really feel that it's worth it to be out kind of like, go out of your way to go to a specific area necessarily, unless it is a very upscale area where you're very confident that you're going to get paid really well. So, and there's just never a guarantee on tips. But what I don't like is the fact that there are so many people that order their food, don't tip you a dime, and then you go drop it off at their house and they're literally living in like a mansion or like a really, really nice house. And it's like they couldn't even tip you $1 or $2 to deliver their food. Like, that is just so incredibly degrading. So at times it does feel degrading to me. And again, this is just my own personal experience. But yeah. So what else do I not like about DoorDash? I don't like the fact that it's easy to get contract violations and not get rid of them. So essentially, if you're more than 20 minutes late, for whatever reason it may be, Doesn't really matter what your reason is. If you're more than 20 minutes late dropping off an order to your customer, you automatically get a contract violation. So I only have one, but unfortunately there was one time that my DoorDash app sent me to a very busy and crowded mall to go into a Chick-fil-A to get somebody's food. Now, with all the other freestanding Chick-fil-A's in the area, I have no idea why they wanted me to go into the mall to get this. So I get to the mall, and it literally took me 10 to 15 minutes just to find a parking spot, and I literally had to park almost half a mile from the entrance of the mall. So I go in and get the food, I come back out, I walk another half mile back to my car, and so I was right about 20 minutes late to the customer dropping off their food. Of course, the customer was not mad, but I automatically got a contract violation. So when I tried to explain this, they just didn't care. So they just left it on there. So that's another thing I don't like. But the good thing is that even if you did get enough contract violations and you got terminated by DoorDash or whatever, you can always just move on to a different app, such as Grubhub, such as Ubereats, such as, there's Caviar, there's even like Favor, which is a little bit different because that includes some different types of things. But another thing I don't like about DoorDash is using red cards. So I've actually never had to use a red card before. And so a red card is generally for like if you go into a grocery store and you're picking up groceries for someone, if the order has not already been paid for, they give you what's called a red card that you're supposed to use. And so the red card frustrates me because I have literally troubleshooted with like 3 different red cards and I've never been able to get one to work. So I do not do any of the grocery orders. If I get a grocery order that comes in, I reject it. And that is one good thing, is you can always accept or reject any orders that you want to. But the problem is, you want to keep your acceptance rate up, because I think if your acceptance rate gets too low, you do get terminated. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. So from time to time, I do reject orders. Also, if you get one that's, say the pay is really, really low, a lot of times I'll get one that pops up that says this order is going to pay you $2.50 or $3.75. And sometimes, it's just like, it's not worth it. And it depends on the situation. If I'm out and I'm just, making it a point to dash for a couple of hours or whatever, I will probably go ahead and take it. But yeah, it just really depends on the situation. So those are mostly the things I don't like about driving for DoorDash, but I'll move into what I do like about it. And so what I do like is the fact that primarily I can do it literally 24/7 whenever I want to, which is really convenient for me as a single parent, because I don't really have super reliable childcare right now, and I'm a freelancer, I'm self-employed, so I do a lot of gig work, and I don't have like certain specific times that I just automatically have childcare, and I homeschool my older son. So for me, it's really nice to be able to just go out whenever I'm able to, just at any given time, and be able to make some extra money. So it's huge. And there are some people that do DoorDash full time. You can certainly make an income off of it, make a living off of it if you want to. A lot of people will try to say that you can't, but I really firmly believe that you can do that. I think it's just there are so many different factors that would go into that, and you would just have to plan accordingly and definitely drive, a fuel efficient vehicle. So for me, I drive a little Ford Fiesta that gets really excellent gas mileage. I don't have a lot of, wear and tear, and stuff that I have to worry about necessarily, but I do also limit my number of miles and dashes that I will do in general. So, I do this because I don't want to wear out my vehicle. So for anyone that dashes full time, or even if you were doing it part time, honestly, even if you were doing it, 10, 15, 20 hours a week, I would still recommend limiting yourself to an extent, unless it's your main source of income. Because if you don't limit yourself, you will wear out your vehicle very, very fast. The same goes for like driving for Uber or Lyft or anything at all. So you really want to be mindful of that and decide how many miles you're comfortable with driving. and just how many deliveries you're comfortable doing, period, because you do have to consider this is a business and you are using your own resources for this. So definitely something to consider. So for me, I generally will limit myself to, you know, it really just depends. Like, I don't so much do it by the miles, I kind of do it by the number of deliveries and how many I've done, you know, within that week and such. So I will kind of limit to a certain amount of deliveries per week, essentially. So another thing I really like about DoorDash that's unique and extremely helpful is the fact that there's no rule against bringing your kids with you. Now, if you have a whole bunch of kids, I wouldn't really recommend, you know, taking them all out with you necessarily. That depends on different factors. You'd have to use your own judgment and see what you're comfortable with. But it's really cool because I can take my oldest son, who's 7, and he can go with me. And he is pretty impatient, so I can't do as many deliveries with him as I might like to. But, you know, if I'm just out doing like 1 or 2 deliveries, then I can definitely take him